right, so welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into this case where a Google search might actually be the key to proving someone innocent.
You know, it's really amazing how much we rely on digital trails these days.
Ah,
In this case, those digital trails might hold the key to setting someone free.
okay, so get this. A defendant might be cleared by a Google search.
Right.
But here's the catch. This incriminating search was found on someone else's phone. The search itself suggests that this other person had prior knowledge of a crime and maybe even intent to cause harm. Now, the prosecution is claiming that two key searches were done in the same browser tab. This was done on an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
But the defense is firing back saying, hold on a sec, that's technically impossible.
And this is where things get really interesting. To understand why that's such a big deal, we need to take a little detour into how web searches actually work on iPhones. Think of each new tab you open in Safari as like a fresh piece of paper. Each one is given a unique identifier, kind of like a serial number, so no two tabs are ever exactly the same.
So it's like each tab has its own digital fingerprint.
Exactly. And here's another thing. iPhones are designed for speed, so Safari never actually fully shuts down. There's always at least one tab open in the background, ready to go. This means that every new tab gets its own fresh identifier, making it impossible for two separate searches to share the same fingerprint.
So even if you close a tab
Right.
and open a new one, it's still going to have its own unique ID.
Its own ID, that's right.
It's like those sticky notes that never quite come off cleanly.
Right.
But okay, getting back to this case, how does this impossible search, how does it actually play out in court?
Well, the defense brought in a guy named Richard Green.
Okay.
He's a digital forensics expert, and he was brought in to examine the phone data.
Right.
His affidavit challenges the prosecution's entire story. And let me tell you, this guy's credentials are seriously impressive. 25 years in computer networking, 18 years in digital forensics, qualified as an expert witness in courts across the country. I mean, this guy really knows his stuff.
So he's like the Sherlock Holmes of digital data.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. What did he find when he started digging into this phone?
He uncovered something pretty significant, a search for hose long to die in cold.
Okay.
And this search was made at a very specific time, and get this, it was marked as deleted.
A deleted search. That sounds kind of suspicious.
Definitely raised some red flags. But Green didn't just take that at face value. He actually used multiple forensic tools, think of them as different kinds of digital magnifying glasses, to confirm this deleted search was actually real. And each tool backed up the other's findings.
So it's like having multiple witnesses corroborating a story.
Yeah,
Except in this case, it's digital tools all confirming the existence of this deleted search.
that's right.
But it sounds like there's even more to this case than just a suspicious search.
Right. Green uncovered a whole bunch of what we call anomalies. 6 major ones, to be exact. 6 major anomalies in the phone data. And these anomalies, along with some questionable things that the police did with the evidence,
Okay.
they raise serious doubts about whether the data is even accurate.
Huh.
And it even hints at the possibility of someone actually tampering with the evidence, which is a huge deal.
Tampering with evidence. Whoa.
Yeah.
So let's break these anomalies down, like one by one.
Right.
What is anomaly 1 that Green points out?
Okay, so anomaly 1 focuses on the sheer volume of searches that were found on this phone. A standard digital forensics tool flagged a whopping 4,560 searches, but only one was marked as deleted.
Right.
And you guessed it, that deleted search was our friend hose long to die in cold.
That's a pretty big coincidence, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Out of thousands of searches, the one that's important to the case is the only one that's deleted.
Right.
It's like finding a single needle in a haystack, a very suspicious needle.
Right.
But what about anomaly 2? How does that tie into the whole impossible search idea?
Well, this is where those unique tab identifiers, the ones that we talked about earlier,
Right.
this is where they come into play.
Right.
Green found that the tab ID linked to the hose long to die in cold search is completely different from the ID for the web activity that the prosecution claims was happening at the same time. And this proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these two actions could not have been done in the same tab.
So it's not just that the prosecution's claim is technically unlikely, it's literally impossible based on how iPhones work. And that's just 2 anomalies. We've got 4 more to unpack. What else did Green uncover?
Well, you see, the prosecution tried to argue that maybe the record for that hose long to die in cold search, maybe it didn't have that search term initially.
Okay.
Maybe it was blank. Or maybe it had something else entirely.
So they're suggesting that the search term could have been changed or added later on.
That's right, like someone was trying to edit the digital history.
Right.
That was their theory. But Green very meticulously examined the data, and he found absolutely no evidence to support that claim. Every single instance of that record had the "hose long to die in cold" search term right there.
Yeah.
So that throws a bit of a wrench into the prosecution's attempt to discredit that search record.
It's starting to feel like the prosecution's case is falling apart at the seams. First the impossible search, then a conveniently deleted record, and now this attempt to cast doubt on the validity of the search itself. What's next on Green's list of anomalies?
Anomaly 4 brings us to some missing information. You see, the hose long to die in cold search, along with 2 other similar searches made later that morning, are all missing some information that is usually found in an iPhone search history. The prosecution's expert suggested that these searches might not have fully loaded, leaving an incomplete record.
So they're saying that the internet connection might have been spotty, that the phone didn't have enough time to record everything.
That's the gist of it, yeah.
Okay.
But Green pointed out that just moments before that incriminating search,
Right.
there was another search, how long to digest food,
Okay.
and that search included a picture,
Right.
which means that the phone had a working internet connection at that time.
So if one search with an image could load, why wouldn't the others? It seems like they're just grasping at straws here.
Right.
This anomaly makes it even more suspicious, that key information is missing.
Exactly. It really does raise the question, was this truly an accident, or is there something more deliberate going on here? Remember, we're still talking about potential evidence tampering.
It's like a puzzle where someone swapped out some of the pieces. It's getting harder to see the full picture. What does Anomaly 5 tell us?
Well, Anomaly 5, Green noticed that something called a Knowledge C artifact, which is basically a digital timestamp that shows when certain things happen on the phone, it's completely out of order.
A timestamp out of order. That's like saying someone sent an email yesterday that arrived in your inbox a week ago. You got it.
It just doesn't make sense.
Usually these timestamps are very predictable. But in this case, the one linked to the "How's long to die in cold" search didn't show up until hours later. That's incredibly unusual, to say the least. It makes you wonder if the search data was messed with somehow, creating this weird chronological hiccup.
So we got possible manipulation, we got contradictory data, missing information,
Right.
and now a time-traveling timestamp. This case is getting wilder by the minute. What's the final anomaly that Green found?
This one brings us back to how the police handle the evidence. The officer who took the phone, he wrote down that he got the phone at a very specific time. But the logs from the Gray Key device, which is a tool that they use to get data off of iPhones, the logs, show that the phone wasn't actually accessed for imaging until 2 hours later.
2 hours. That's a pretty big gap. What was happening during that time?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, we don't have a clear answer.
Right.
The officer's report says that he got the phone's password,
Okay.
but it doesn't explain why there was this 2-hour delay.
That's concerning. And to make matters worse, the report also doesn't include something called a hash value, which is, it's like a digital fingerprint that proves the evidence hasn't been tampered with.
Right. It's like a missing signature on a crucial document.
Exactly.
Without that hash value, there's just no way to be 100% sure that the data that we're looking at is the same data that was originally on the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this lack of transparency combined with all the other anomalies, that we've discussed, it just throws a big shadow of doubt over the whole chain of custody.
Right.
Makes you wonder if something fishy was going on during those 2 hours.
So we've got 6 major red flags. We got the deleted search that stands out like a sore thumb, impossible tab IDs, missing information that just doesn't add up, and a time-traveling timestamp. And now, the suspicious gap in the chain of custody, it's like a digital house of cards. It really is. Each anomaly on its own is concerning.
Right.
But taken all together, they paint a very troubling picture. It really makes you question the reliability of this digital evidence.
It's a good thing Richard Green was brought in to take a closer look. But didn't he also find some additional searches on that phone?
Yeah.
Ones that were made later that morning?
You're right. There were 2 more searches related to that same phrase, "how's long to die in cold," that were made on the same phone later that morning.
So 3 searches in total, all with very similar wording. What's the connection between those 3?
Well, so the first search, the one that we've been focusing on happened
Right.
at 22 under 7 a.m. The second one, How Long to Die in Icerecht, popped up at 6.23.51 a.m. And then just a few seconds later at 6.24, a.m., we see the third search, How's Long to Die in Cold.
Wait, did you just say Sigmeist? It seems like someone was having a bit of trouble with their spelling.
You noticed that too, huh? Yeah, those typos are interesting. They suggest that the person typing those searches was either in a hurry or maybe distracted, like they were trying to find information quickly and discreetly
Okay, so
that they found.
these extra searches add another layer of intrigue to this case. It's like a digital breadcrumb trail leading us deeper into the mystery.
Yeah.
But, shifting back to Green's analysis for a moment, I'm kind of curious. Uh, did he uncover anything else about those impossible searches? The ones that couldn't have happened in the same tab.
He sure did. Remember how we talked about each tab having its own unique digital fingerprint? Well, Green actually dug even deeper into that.
Okay.
He looked at the sequence of events that led up to that 2.27 a.m. search for Hose Long to Die in Cold.
Okay, so we're going back to the very first search that raised all those red flags.
Exactly.
What did he find?
The data shows that right before that search, the iPhone user was they were browsing a website called hockamocksports.com. This happened at 2.2736 a.m. Just 4 seconds later, the Hos Long to Die in Cold search appears in the data.
Wow, that's a really tight time frame.
Yeah,
So we have two very distinct actions happening within like just a few seconds of each other.
exactly. And remember, the prosecution is claiming that both of these actions, browsing the sports website and searching for that phrase, that they happened in the same browser tab.
Right.
But as we know, that's just technically impossible because of those unique tab IDs.
It's like trying to be in two places at once. You
Yeah.
can't do it. But Green doesn't just, tell us it's impossible, right? He actually explains why, like the technical reasons behind it.
Right. He breaks it down in detail.
Okay.
He explains exactly how that tab ID system works.
Mhm.
Each ID is a long, unique string of letters and numbers, kind of like a digital serial number,
Wow.
and it's generated using a special algorithm.
So it's not just like a random jumble of characters.
Right.
There's a specific method behind it that makes each ID unique and impossible to duplicate.
That's right. And he goes on to explain that it's statistically improbable that two separate tabs would ever share the same ID. I mean, it's like winning the lottery twice in a row.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
So the technical evidence is firmly on Green's side.
Yeah.
It's impossible for those two searches to have occurred within the same tab. But I'm curious, did he consider how people actually use their phones? The
Yeah.
human element of all this?
Absolutely. He's not just a tech whiz. He also understands how people interact with their devices.
Okay.
He pointed out that switching between tabs on an iPhone is a very deliberate action. You have to either tap on a specific tab or swipe between them. It's not something that happens by accident.
So if someone is, busy browsing a website, it's pretty unlikely that they're also conducting a completely different search in that same tab without even realizing it.
Exactly, especially within such a short time frame. It would be highly unusual for someone to jump back and forth between tabs in a matter of seconds.
Right.
Especially when one action involves, reading a website and the other involves typing in a search term.
So not only is it technically impossible, but it just doesn't make sense from a user behavior standpoint either.
Right.
It's like saying that someone was reading a book while simultaneously writing a letter on the same page.
Right.
It doesn't add up.
And that's where Green's expertise really shines through. He combines his technical knowledge with an understanding of human behavior to build a very strong case. But remember those 6 major anomalies that we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't stop there. He actually found even more discrepancies in the phone data.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah.
It's like this case is a bottomless pit of digital inconsistencies. What else did he find?
Well, he uncovered a bunch of inconsistencies that raise serious doubts about the accuracy of the phone data as a whole.
You're right.
Things like missing timestamps, gaps in the phone's activity logs, incomplete web browsing history.
So it's not just that the data might have been tampered with.
Right.
It's also possible that crucial information is just missing.
Exactly. And if there are multiple instances of missing or incomplete information, it makes you wonder what else might be missing. It really undermines the prosecution's ability to present a clear and trustworthy narrative based on this phone data.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Right.
But didn't Green also take a look at how law enforcement actually handled the phone and the data?
He did. He raised some serious concerns about the chain of custody, especially that 2-hour gap between when they took the phone and when they actually started extracting data.
Right, right. We talked about that earlier. And he also pointed out the missing hash value, which would have helped to verify that the data hadn't been tampered with.
Exactly. Without that hash value, there's
Yeah.
just no way to guarantee that the data that we're looking at is the same data that was on the phone originally. And to make matters worse, Green also looked at the tools and techniques that the prosecution's experts use to analyze the data.
Well,
And he pointed out some potential problems with their methods, suggesting that that their conclusions might be flawed or incomplete.
so it's not just that the data itself is questionable.
Right.
The way it was handled and analyzed is also under scrutiny.
Exactly. Green's analysis really exposes a lot of weaknesses in the prosecution's digital evidence. It
Yeah.
casts serious doubt on their claims
Wow.
and raises concerns about the integrity of their whole investigation.
It's a stark reminder that digital evidence, while it can be very revealing,
Right.
is not foolproof.
Yeah.
It needs to be handled with care. It needs to be analyzed by experts, and there needs to be complete transparency every step of the way.
Yeah, I completely agree.
This is all incredibly fascinating. You know, we've really gone deep into this case, exploring everything from the technical details of those impossible searches to the broader implications of digital evidence and how it's handled. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to step back and look at the bigger picture. We'll explore the challenges of proving that someone has tampered with digital evidence.
Okay.
We'll discuss the importance of having a strong chain of custody, and we'll consider the ethical considerations surrounding digital evidence in general.
Well, it sounds like we're about to enter a whole new level of the deep dive. I
Yeah.
can't wait to uncover those insights. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts of this episode, you know, wading through a sea of digital data, trying to make sense of those impossible web searches and all those anomalies that Richard Green uncovered.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? From unique tab IDs to missing timestamps. We've seen how digital evidence can be both incredibly revealing and frustratingly complex.
It's like we've been playing digital detectives, you know, following these breadcrumbs through this maze of technical jargon and procedural questions.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I think it's important to step back and consider the bigger picture here. You know, what are the broader implications of this case? What does it tell us about the challenges of using digital evidence in court?
That's a great question, and it's something that legal systems around the world are grappling with right now. You know, one of the biggest takeaways from this case is that digital evidence, while potentially powerful, it's not a slam dunk. It's susceptible to manipulation. It's susceptible to misinterpretation, and that's why it's so crucial to have safeguards in place. One of the most important is establishing a robust chain of custody.
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about that gap in the timeline in this case?
Yeah.
You know, the 2 hours between when the police took the phone and when they actually started extracting data, that lack of documentation, it raised serious red flags about the integrity of the evidence.
It's like a relay race where the baton gets passed around in the dark.
Yeah.
If you can't trace each handoff, you know, how do you know that the baton hasn't been switched out for a fake one?
That's a great analogy. A strong chain of custody, it ensures that the evidence presented in court is the same evidence that was collected at the scene, untouched and unaltered. That means meticulous documentation, secure storage, and strict protocols for handling and transferring the evidence.
So it's not just about analyzing the ones and zeros. It's about the the people involved and the procedures that they follow. Ensuring that everything is done by the book. So what can be done to ensure that digital evidence is handled responsibly and that justice is served?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This case, it highlights the need for independent experts like Richard Green,
Right.
who can examine the evidence from multiple perspectives, challenge assumptions, and present alternative interpretations.
So it's like having a second set of eyes.
Yeah.
Or in this case, a second set of highly trained digital eyes,
I may.
to double check everything and make sure nothing is missed.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the importance of transparency and open communication between law enforcement, forensic experts, and legal teams.
Okay.
Sharing information openly can help to build trust and ensure that everyone involved has a clear understanding of the evidence and its limitations.
It's about creating a system of checks and balances where everyone is working together to find the truth, even if it means questioning their own assumptions or challenging established procedures.
Well said. This case is a perfect example of why we need to be having these conversations.
Yeah.
As we rely more and more on digital evidence in our legal system, it's crucial to have robust procedures in place to ensure its authenticity and accuracy.
It's like building a bridge between the digital world and the courtroom, a bridge that needs to be strong enough to support the weight of justice.
That's a powerful image, and it underscores the importance of having a solid foundation of ethical practices, clear guidelines, and constant vigilance when it comes to handling digital evidence.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We have.
From the technical nitty-gritty of those impossible searches to the ethical and legal considerations of digital evidence in general, it's been an eye-opening journey.
I completely agree, and I hope it's been an eye-opening journey for our listeners as well.
Yeah, it's a reminder that in the digital age, even the seemingly mundane can become extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to ensure that those digital trails they lead us towards truth and justice. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.